From the AM/FM 24/7 radio network, broadcasting from AM and FM stations around the country. Welcome to the Small Business Administration award-winning School for Startups Radio, where we talk all things small business and entrepreneurship. Now, here is your host, the guy that believes anyone can be a successful entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is not about creativity, risk, or passion, Jim Beach.
Welcome back to School for Startups Radio. I hope you're having a great day today and using today to make yourself a better person, a better entrepreneur, someone more likely to succeed. You know, I love bringing you cool stories, and I have found one of them. I'm very excited to tell you the story and to introduce you to Dr. Barry Nalebuff. He is the Milton Steinbach Professor at Yale University, but he is also the co-founder of a company called Honest Tea, which was eventually sold to Coca-Cola. He has written several very important books. The first one from '93 called Think Strategically, The Competitive Edge in Business, Politics, and Everyday Life, which started, I believe, the conversation of what we now call game theory. Written another book about game theory in 2010 called Art of Strategy, which was how to use game theory in your everyday life. And he has just published a new book called Mission in a Bottle, The Honest Guide to Doing Business Differently and Succeeding. And I think it tells the story of his tea company. Barry, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's not even a cool story. It's a nice story we're going to have today.
That is true. Very true. How did you succeed and become such a successful professor while running a business at the same time? Didn't they try to run you out of the teacher's lounge for also being an entrepreneur for real?
Well, it's a good thing that I am teaching at a business school, so I think there's a little bit more of appreciation of turning ideas into action. All
right. Talk to us about how you did that. Your tea company, I believe, was designed to ride the wave of, good, fresh ingredients and wholesomeness. Talk to us about the ideation of that process, how you got started with your co-founder. Tell us the story at the very beginning.
Sure. Well, I would say that we were a little bit ahead of the wave. That when we started in 1998, Whole Foods hadn't yet really existed. In fact, our first sale was to a company called Fresh Fields, which ultimately was bought by Whole Foods. So it helped that we were a little bit early. The story starts with the fact that you might think there's an infinite number of beverages out there. There's every food you can imagine: colas, uncolas, lime, raspberry, cherry, grape, orange, root beer, colas, uncolas. But the reality is that neither Seth nor I could find anything we wanted to drink. That water is boring, diet is artificial, and colas were basically liquid candy. And so, in spite of all the variety, we were thirsty. And kind of figured there'd be other customers who were like ourselves, who wanted something that was a normal beverage, more interesting than water, but not so crazy sweet that it was like a cola. And for years, I had mixed orange juice and club soda, and still do. I think it's a great drink, but didn't think that would be a great company. And it just so happened that I went to India, discovered that teas are this wonderful beverage with both cultural authenticity, health benefits, premium, in the sense that great tea only costs $0.05 a cup. And nobody had been selling great tea in the U.S. Starbucks had shown you could take coffee and turn it from a cup of joe into a premium drink, but people hadn't done that for tea. And so there was the opportunity.
Excellent. And so how did you get started? You weren't a chemist. You're not a mixologist, right? So how did you get going? What were the first steps that you took? How did your partner, and I want to point out his name, Seth Goldman, also a professor there with you at Yale, I believe. What'd you do?
Seth was one of my students, that's right.
So what was the first thing you did?
Well, the first thing we did is we stole recipes.
Stole?
So, absolutely. That is, in Morocco, people drink green tea with honey and mint, and we figured that 30 million people in Morocco probably have a good idea. And then in India, they drink black tea with cardamom and pepper, and they call that chai, and we figured that was a pretty good idea. And in Germany, they drink something called Rote Grütze, which is a hibiscus berry blend. We figured the tea tasted great, but the name wasn't so good, so we changed it to Black Forest Berry. So essentially, we took popular teas from around the world and just copied them.
Okay. And, I mean, did you call up the local tea manufacturing company and send them a recipe?
No, actually, we bought teas retail in some cases. That basically, in others, we just we went to a local spice house called the Vans in Baltimore and said we'd like to grind some cardamom and some pepper and put it together with some black tea, and they helped us make a spice mix for us.
Okay. Wow.
So,
all right.
So we did everything in our kitchen is really the answer.
Unbelievable. All right. And what were your first marketing steps?
Our first marketing step is, well, we had a local artist in New Haven, a wonderful fellow named Sloan Wilson, designed labels for us that evoked wine labels. We printed them out with a laser printer, put them on a washed-up Snapple bottle with some rubber cement, spray painted the cap black so it looked like it was a wine bottle, and we brought it to the buyer at Whole Foods, who ended up buying a truckload. And so it looked like it was a real product, but it was tea that we had made in our kitchen.
With a Snapple bottle and a spray-painted cap.
Yep. And there was no pop when you opened the top because we had filled it ourselves, but Seth was careful to open it and stuff, and so the buyer wouldn't notice.
I love it. And you sold a truckload. Your first order ever was a truckload to Whole Foods. Is that correct?
Right. Yep. And the time from when we decided to go to our first sale was 25 days.
Unbelievable. And how did you fulfill that order? That's a lot of work for you and your spouses in a kitchen. I can't imagine you did that in your kitchen.
So our spouses were never involved in the kitchen to begin with, but what the buyer said to us is that their planogram was full for the next 3 months, and so therefore he really didn't mean to disappoint us, but he couldn't take delivery for 3 months. It was not a problem, and we said no, we could figure it out.
Okay, you could figure it out, and you're secretly thinking, thank gosh, we have 3 months to figure this out.
Exactly, and so we went to just a huge number of various places that made anything from apple cider to sodas to beers, trying to figure out who it was who had the equipment that could brew tea. And people wanted syrup and concentrate and powder, and we would bring them tea leaves, and they were a little confused with that. But ultimately, we found a plant up in Buffalo, Mayer Brothers, that was willing to give us a chance. And so we brought everything from swimming pool filters to laundry bags and started brewing tea.
And what about getting approval? Did you have to go through like any FDA licensing or any testing to make sure it was safe or anything like that?
Well, the plants have FDA approval.
Okay.
So that was okay. And the nice thing about making tea is it's naturally pasteurized because you're boiling water.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. When the first truckload hit Whole Foods, how was it received? How long did it take you to realize you were on to a mega hit? Talk to us about those first 6 months of sales.
Well, in fact, it was a struggle. One of the challenges was that our product looked like it was in a Snapple bottle, and so people didn't realize that we were the anti-Snapple. And so we didn't have any money for advertising, but what we did is we hired some summer interns, and we literally did sampling events at every Whole Foods in the region every week. And when people tried the product, they understood what it was about. And the nice thing about iced tea is that you keep some in your fridge and you share it with your friends. And so we really counted on word of mouth, and it came through for us.
That just makes it sound too easy, though, Barry. I mean, granted, it was a struggle, but gosh, that process. So how long did it take for you to say hit $1 million in sales?
That basically took a year.
That's so fast. And that's amazingly quick. So the product was incredibly well received. So, wow, congratulations. And now it's in over 100,000 stores. How long did you remain a part of the company and ride it through? And talk to us about the Coca-Cola transition and all of that.
So Coca-Cola bought the company in 2011, and around at that time sales were around $70 million. And that was 13 years after we had started. So, and at that point, I moved from being chairman of the board and to being on an advisory board. The challenge is that if you want to build a company with $1 billion in sales rather than $100 million, you really need to have just the world-class distribution. And there aren't that many world-class distribution options out there. There's Coke, there's Pepsi, there's Canada Dry, Snapple, and we didn't really want to build a whole other distribution network. So we were very fortunate that, as it turned out, Coke and Nestle had a partnership called Nestea that wasn't very effective for them. And
I remember that. Yes.
They ended up really dismantling that partnership in the U.S., and that gave Coca-Cola and Nestle both an opportunity to buy a tea company, which previously they couldn't do on their own because everything had to be done through this partnership. So when that happened, both Nestle and Coca-Cola approached us saying that they wanted to have Honest Tea be that partner. And we didn't really want to sell. Things were going great. But we also realized that if we didn't, we'd end up competing with whoever it was they bought. And I'm not sure that we really decided that that was going to be in our best interest or our shareholders' best interest. Plus, the opportunity to do something with Coca-Cola and really bring our product to a much larger audience is amazing. That a nice thing about Honest Tea is that so much of the social mission is in the product itself. And so that if you have 1 billion people drinking it, rather than 100 million, you're doing 10 times the social mission. You're buying more organic ingredients. You're buying more fair trade ingredients. And since it's a whole lot less sweet, you're doing a lot more to improve the American diet.
Well said, Barry. That's just fantastic. And it's an interesting reason to sell out, and I don't mean sell out in any way. I don't mean it in a derogatory way at all.
We think they were buying in.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. Yes. And so do you still have any involvement with the company now, or is Coke 100% in charge?
Well, Seth is still running the business on a day-to-day basis. And so he certainly calls me up and we have interesting conversations. And, of course, I've been working very actively with Seth for the last couple of years in writing the book, Mission in a Bottle. And so that's been my primary involvement.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the book now. It's in a unusual format. It's a cartoon. Talk to us about that and what some of the lessons that a entrepreneur might learn from the book.
Sure. Well, we wrote the book in cartoon format for many reasons. One, it turns out that lessons that are learned visually are ones that tend to stick with people. Two, our story itself is a visual story. Three, the next generation of readers grew up on graphic stories, and so it's something they're very familiar with. And does the world really need another business book in the traditional format? Well, not really. And so this was an opportunity to do something different and have some fun. And I think it really works. So at least that's been the reception we've seen from the market. It was #1 in the graphic hardcover category for several weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. The book forces you to write in the format of tweet with good grammar, if you think about what's inside the bubble.
I love that. That's funny. Tweet with good grammar. I'd love to get back to good grammar, Barry. I miss it.
Absolutely. And then in terms of what entrepreneurs are likely to learn, you can make all the mistakes that we made, and that might cost you $3 million. You could come to the business school at Yale where I teach, and that would cost you $100,000. Or you could spend $23 retail, probably $17 on Amazon, and instead get all of that at the huge bargain price. and learn from all of our mistakes so you don't have to make them. And that's everything from figuring out how you're going to do manufacturing, to who are the right people to hire, to how do you structure the term sheets and the equity structure of a company and do valuation, to how do you motivate a sales force. We share all of our lessons. I mean, I think one of the things about being a professor is that I take a lot of notes and try and learn from every experience.
Well, you say, Barry, that you try to share your mistakes. I haven't heard any mistakes that you made yet. Sounds like y'all did it just perfectly.
Okay, so I'll share a few. I mean, we bought a bottling plant that probably cost us over $1 million. And we knew that it wasn't our area of expertise, but we thought that we need to have it to ensure production. And in the end, we ultimately sold the plant. We ended up making the product of the same plant, but we just didn't own it, and it was a much better solution for us. We once thought about doing a sales incentive contract with a distributor, and we ended up learning that the salesmen just decided among themselves who was going to win the contract, who's going to win the bonus, and so it would have really had no effect whatsoever. So those are
interesting.
Two small examples of mistakes. We once offered a guarantee in terms of the valuation of the company to our shareholders. That is, we said we'd be no more than 3 times sales. And we made that guarantee right before September 11th. And that was not the right time to make a guarantee about what your sales would be.
Right.
So we made plenty of mistakes. The good news is that we had lots that was going right that allowed us to survive them.
Right.
And actually, that's one of the big lessons I say for any entrepreneur is that you can't imagine all the things that go wrong, but you would better have the resiliency, both personal and financial, to get you through it. Otherwise, you'll lose control of your company or you'll lose your whole company. So we had glass in bottles at one point that led to us having to take back probably $1 million worth of product in the summer, which was our best-selling season. We had a product called kombucha that turned accidentally alcoholic. And again, we had to take it off the shelves. And that was very costly to us. And you can just never anticipate these kind of things that will happen.
Right. Well, I love hearing the struggles, because all of the people listening to this show have had struggles, so it makes it easier to relate to what you've done, Barry. So I appreciate you.
We had investors who were our competition, who came basically to buy shares in the company so they could get our business plan.
Well, we have to read this book to hear all of these stories. This is fantastic. Barry, one of the things that we talk about on this show a lot is that if you don't have an idea, you should just go find one on Google or copy it. And that's why I was so interested in the fact that you copied, and you were being a little bit facetious, recipes and ideas from around the world. Also, I believe that bootstrapping is the way to go, and it certainly sounds like this was a bootstrap as much as possible, the way you did it in your kitchen. Can you talk to us about some overarching lessons of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in lean startups and rapid prototyping and basically not spending a huge amount of money on creating a product until you know there's a demand for it. So that, no question, and that's a general story. I would be aghast and disappointed about this idea of just going on Google and finding an idea, because I think unless you have a passion to do this, you'll never get through all of the valleys that you're sure to encounter. So it better be that you wake up in the morning saying, this is something that I just have to do. And I'll give away one of my secrets here, but when I meet an entrepreneur, I spend a lot of time trying to talk them out of it. And if I'm able to do that, then the person should never have done this in the first place, because the type of entrepreneur, the type of passion that you need and conviction is such that there's no way somebody can convince you otherwise.
Well, I'm fascinated. I'm so excited you brought that up, because I'm going to disagree with you. So I'd love to see how this goes. I believe that passion is great if you want to start a big business, but there's lots of people sitting on the sofa now who just want to start a business that makes $75,000 a year. And last year, Barry, almost exactly a year ago, my wife started an Amazon business. She buys stuff at wholesale. It doesn't matter what it is, and sells it retail on Amazon.
I'm going to agree with you too, but I'm going to call that a job, not a business.
Okay. All right.
And that's a distinction. So there's things that you can do that will support yourself, that will make some money, but ultimately you couldn't sell to anyone. That it requires you to be doing this. And that's fine. There are a lot of ways to make a job for yourself. So think about that as self-employment. And that's great. But I don't think of that as in the sense of starting a business.
Okay. I will 100% agree with you and go with you on that one. So all I know, Barry, is that we're really passionate about the extra money that my wife is bringing into the house. It's really cool to have. So, sir, we are about to run out of time. Other than going to Amazon and buying Mission in a Bottle, the honest guide to doing business differently and succeeding, how else should we follow you, circle you, all that stuff?
Well, you can go to Barnes & Noble and get it. You can get it at your local independent bookstore. There are a lot of ways of getting the book. I think the key is that, let me make this pitch for parents out there, that most parents have no idea of how to explain what they do to their kids in terms of why business is interesting, why it's fun, why it's challenging, why it gets them excited. And that this is the kind of book where if you have an idealistic young college grad, high school student, college kid, and you want them to get excited about making a difference and being successful, this book will inspire them, because one of the things we're particularly proud of is we show how it's possible to make a successful company without sacrificing your ideals, a mission-driven company in a profit-driven world. And that a lot of people think that you have to compromise, and the answer is you don't. You don't have to compromise your product or your ideals in order to be successful.
Well, fantastic. I am going to get a copy for my kids. It looks fantastic. Barry, thank you so much for being with us today, sir.
Well, thank you for inviting me and sharing the ideas.
Excellent.